Unfortunately, Bhavna, last month your performance is at 75%, which is little less than the benchmark of 80%. And thus, I'm sorry to inform, but I'm forced to put you on PIP.
So PIP, I mean, I understand my situation that my performance has been low during this time, but so PIP,
See,
I don't
Bhavna, we are
understand.
not here to discuss this. The decision has been taken.
So
It's just an PIP. I would
but
request you
how
to.
can you take a decision on the basis of my 1 month performance? Or it's been like, you know, I've always performed above 90%, and
Bhavna,
that is
don't
also
make this
trending,
difficult for
sir.
me. Try to understand.
So,
Let's focus on targets
so
instead.
but sir, it's about PIP, sir. It's about my career also, sir. How can I just, you know, I mean,
Bhavna,
sir,
I
you
have
know
an
the
important
situation,
meeting. We
sir.
will discuss
Sir,
this later.
sir, you know my
Okay. Bye,
situation also.
Bhavna.
Sir, please, sir, don't, sir, please, sir. Shit, yeah. How can you give me a PIP? I've worked so hard for it. I've always, what do I do? I mean, where will I get a job now?
Okay, that was intense. Uh, just maybe before I hand over, Bhavna, what are you feeling? What like, right now? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I, the situation at the current times is as such that each one of us like are putting their best towards everything that we are doing, and just judging on 1 month performance, the market trends are such that he should have listened to me at least. I mean, he did not know my family situation. I am the only owner of the family. I just have my mother. And you know, Debojit, that at this point of time, we are not getting jobs anywhere. On 1 month performance, we have been there in hard times in front of the company. I mean, we have worked hard, but just because my mother was ill, I could not perform for this 1 month. That doesn't mean that he just puts me on PIP. You know how PIP is. PIP is just that you are out. It's not that you're getting a performance, that they will be checking your performance. It's just that 1 month thing that he has given it to me.
Hmm. I
I,
heard you. I heard you. Abhishek, what are your thoughts?
Well, obviously, Debojit, I was not liking the conversation, but exercising it, it was giving a sense of power as well, that you have this power, you can decide over other people's as well. And inside, deep inside, it was not, I was personally not liking the conversation, that someone has to go through a rough patch because of me, because of my decision, basically. But at the same time, I was feeling that this is the requirement of company and this needs to be done anyhow.
Thanks, both of you. Thanks for being honest and doing this very well. On this note, I would hand over to Anustup for the context of a difficult conversation. What are they and how can we navigate through them? Yes, Anustup, over to you.
Thank you, Debojit. Thank you, Abhishek and Bhavna. And, I was really touched and I almost felt like I was in both of your shoes. I guess audience members feel similarly. And what I'm going to do over the next 1 hour is to have a conversation with you about this difficult conversation. And as a disclaimer or as a background, I'd like to share something about myself that I have always struggled with these conversations. I've never been great at these conversations. I have always found it difficult. I have found it very, very, troublesome almost at a personal level, at a professional level. And I have made many mistakes and perhaps learned a little bit from that. And because of my own struggle with this issue, when Debojit and Palak told me, talk about one thing you're really good at, I thought, why not talk about something which I'm not so great at or trying to be better at? And I thought we should pick this topic. So what I'm going to do is that before we go in, what I want you to do is to think of what happened between, Abhishek and Bhavna. Take 30 seconds and reflect. What did you think that the participants were saying? And was there anything that they did not say, right? So there were things that they said, but there were also things that they didn't say, right? how do you think they interacted with each other? What was the nature of that interaction, right? And how do you think they were feeling about themselves, about each other? And just take note of it. We'll come back to this conversation in a minute, but it'll be helpful if you can take note of it. Maybe you can tap into the chat box if you feel like, and make some observations. What I'm looking for here is observations, what you saw, not your judgment or inferences so much, but just some observations, right?
Feel free to write in the chat box, people, if you have answers, you feel that you already have an observation, you can write in the chat box.
Correct. So now, let's kind of jump in a little bit into what is going on here. Think about yourself. I want you to think about yourself, about a time when you've had, I'm sure all of us have had these kind of difficult conversations, right? And think about a similar situation. It could be a boss insults you in front of a team. It could be an angry customer threatens to quit. It seems sometime, like a peer steals your idea, something you've been working on for a very long time. Maybe you deserve a promotion, or you're looking for a big role and you missed out because you just failed to bring it up, or something else happened. Maybe you have a situation where a colleague misbehaves with you, or it was an unpleasant situation you handled, or maybe it was something else. The situation actually doesn't matter. But what I want you to do is to reflect on how you typically respond to this situation, okay? And what I don't want you to do is to think too much. There's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. Take a situation in your mind and think about how you typically respond. And Dave is going to show you a quick poll, and we're going to come back to this poll in a minute.
Yeah, so you can see the poll on the screen, people. We have given some examples, but just assume the most difficult situation or conversation in your life till now when you answer it. What do you normally do? Option 1, you understate or selectively show your true opinion. Instead, you do sugarcoating, you just try to say sweet things rather than talking about the point. Option 2, you talk, but steer away from the sensitive issues and talk about other things. You're not sugarcoating, but you're talking about other things than the main issue in point. Option 3, you exit the conversation, giving some excuse or fear, or don't even get into the conversation basically. Option 4, you overstate your point. That means you have a point of view, but you're, if I may use the word, violently stating it. Strong words, directing the other person. Option 5, you're stereotyping it. You're saying, "Arey, I know an old colleague who also does like that. I have an old, in my previous job also, it's something like this happened, and this is the situation I faced." You tend to stereotype it with your past experience. And last is, do anything to win, including threats and consequences. 35% people have voted. Take your time.
And don't take too much time, but I want everyone to vote. I think the more votes we get and the quicker the response is, I think we'll get the richer data. There's no right or wrong answer.
50% people have voted. 55, 60% now. %70 people have voted. Just take an answer and vote. There's no right or wrong, as Anustup rightly says. We'll wait for 10 seconds more. Yeah, let's have the results.
Okay.
Interesting. We'll come back to the results, but as we see, the sugarcoating happening 36% of the times. But
Let's see.
We'll come back to the results.
Okay.
Yeah, we can move on.
So great. So now think about a little bit around what makes these difficult conversations difficult? We have all sorts of conversations, but you can just take any of the conversations we just spoke about, either the conversation that just happened in front of you between Abhishek and Bhavna, or a conversation you've had. Among other things, it's important to understand and disentangle why these conversations become difficult. One, like some of you are rightly pointing out, opinions vary about the situation. So one person has one perspective about the situation, but the other person has another perspective, right? Like, I think, everybody saw how Bhavna felt. Obviously, she was very vocal, but Gitika is also telling us that you could feel it the other way as well, that Abhishek could have done something. So there's always a varying opinion. So there are usually, if not two stories, sometimes there are more than two stories, but usually there are two stories about what happened. There was a situation, but what happened in that situation could have two different interpretations. So the manager has one side of this story, the employee has other side of this story. The person who stole your idea had one side of this story, and you have another side of this story. And the second thing which is important, as you kind of rightly saw, is that feelings are also involved. The emotions are running very, very high. You could see that even though it was a role play, I could almost feel the anger and hurt that Bhavna was feeling. I was also able to feel what Abhishek was feeling. I mean, he wasn't feeling too upbeat about the conversation either, although he said he had a mild sense of power, but he also felt disappointed in a way. So there are emotions involved. And the other important thing is that the stakes are high, right? Like when Debojit asked Bhavna, her first thing was, yeah, PIP is not a small decision. It's a big decision. And as you will find out sometime later, and we'll talk about it and we'll share some information, we'll find out the stakes were also high for Abhishek. So there is always two stories about what happened. The stakes are high on both sides and the emotions are charged. And I think if we are able to understand and relate to these two or three aspects of difficult conversation, I think that is a first step to doing it. But let's now try to understand that what do we do when we are faced with a difficult conversation. But I want to take you back to a time when human beings were not living in cities, but they were probably living in jungles, and their life was always a threat. And suddenly a wild animal or a fellow human might confront them. And so our limbic system of the brain was trained to do just three things really: fight, freeze, or fight. And that's what we end up in a way doing. So in one sense, some of us try to fight the situation, which means I overstate my point. I'm telling you, this is it. I'm telling you, this is the way it should be. So use strong words like, this has been proven by research. This is the way the company policy is. Then they also go and label the other person, stereotype it. You are talking like an imbecile, or you are talking like an idiot, or you sound too much like an intellectual, whatever it is, right? You're labeling the other person, so the other person goes on defensive. And then you can also attack the other person, saying, being both aggressive by saying, this might have consequences on your promotion. But a lot of us are also passive aggressive. Okay, fine. Then don't expect cooperation from me going forward if we don't get this done my way. So it's usually my way or the highway. That's the fight response. But there is also the flight response, which is that we mask our feelings. We understate or selectively show my true opinion. We say, yeah, that's all nice. And I hear you. and you can almost see a but coming. This is what I call a yes but statement, right? You're in these meetings and you see someone kind of agreeing to you, but towards the end there is some sarcasm, some reservations, so you're really not able to reach what's going to happen. The other issue which a lot of times happens, and it happens to me a lot, is avoiding. I talk, but I steer away from sensitive issues. I talk about other things, I talk about things unrelated. It takes me a long time to get to the main point. And by the time I come to the main point, I've already kind of watered down what I really wanted to say. And even sometimes we just withdraw from the conversation, and we withdraw from two reasons. One, using anger. As I said, this just doesn't sound like what I want to do. I don't think this conversation is going anywhere. Or you withdraw by trying to keep it safe, saying that, hey, this is getting too hot. I don't think we want to deal with it. I wonder, and I wanted to think about, yeah, somebody was saying something.
No, so that's just noise. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I wanted to now, Debojit, tell me, where are we with this audience on all of this?
So very interesting discussion till now, and all of you voted yourself about where you are. The first biggest option, 36% of you said I understate or selectively show my true opinion, which is mask. Now that 36% of you are doing, which means you're not fighting it, you are escaping it, and escaping it with the option that you have on screen, right hand side, mask, 36% of you. The second one is 28% of you say I avoid it, which is I talk but steer away from the sensitive issues or talk about other things. 28% of you. Amazing to see, 54% of you are either masking it or avoiding it as of today. 17%, which is the next highest vote, is I fight and try to control the conversation. I overstate my point, use strong words, and I direct the other person. I think some of you in the I mentioned Abhishek was trying to do it, which is controlling the conversation in terms of a fight behavior. 13% of you say I withdraw. I exit the conversation, giving some excuse or fear of breakdown. Someone is ill at home. I'm not able to, I want water. I will come back in half an hour. Let's have it at end of day. You withdraw from the conversation with flight. And very few people of you have said that you either label or attack. Labeling would mean you stereotype, like Anustup was mentioning. Attacking would mean do anything to win using threats and consequences. So Anustup, to your question, the audience is majorly masking or avoiding their conversations now, while some of them are also trying to control it.
Correct. And that's fair. And the other thing I would just want to tell you is that, again, I don't want you to put a label on yourself by taking this quiz. What we'd all do is that we are all of this, right? I have done all of this in my life, depending on the situation, right? There are times when I have attacked, there are times when I have labeled, there are also times when I have withdrawn from the conversation. I do remember Debojit, and I have a story. I remember doing something terrible to him. He's obviously a very nice person. And there have been times I have done all kinds of things. So all we need to take away from this is, am I aware that I, when faced with this situation, have an instinctive reaction to either fight or flee or freeze, right? Those are the three things we typically do. I'm putting freeze and flee in one corner and fight in another corner. But the conversation I want to have with you today is also, is there a third way between fight or flee? Do you think there is a third way? And whenever I ask you a question, you can tap into the chat box so I get some body language, some response. If some of you can feel free to switch on your videos, that would be great to see some faces and some expressions. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. So what we want to do is to have what I would call neither fight nor flight, but another F, which is figure out. I'm just using these letters to ensure you remember some of these ideas. And there is no rocket science, right? We know all of this. That figuring out is really saying that we are figuring out a mutual purpose, that this is a problem that we both have, right? And the way to figure out is, I'm using another kind of, terminologies or acronym saying CRIB. One is by communicating. And like Gitika is saying, like Netravati is saying, that you communicate, you speak about it honestly. And Ziad is saying that you meet in the middle, a variety of ways to get there. You know, you invent ways of finding mutuality, right? And you brainstorm and you have a talk, right? Sonali is saying, yes, have a talk. So let's brainstorm. And Pradnya is saying, you know, may ask them to reconsider the decision. But the one important point I think I want you to consider is recognizing. I think very often a lot of problems fester like a kind of a disease inside us, where both of us are going through the motions of being in the same space, but not recognizing the problem together. Maybe we each recognize it, but we do not recognize it together, right? And the way Greek philosophers, and this is an old problem, right? People have been having disagreements since the time they kind of got together as a society. So the Greek philosophers called it dialogue. And the term dialogue stems from the Greek word dialogos, which means that its roots are dia, which is through, and logos, which is speech and reason. That through communication, we try to have a conversation of figuring out. Now, can we go back to the situation, if you remember some of your thoughts from Bhavna and Abhishek's conversation? Let's try to go back to that conversation and see if we can get out some practical tips on what to do to go forward. So I want to now show you some facts, okay? Debojit, can you tell me some facts which obviously were known to all, but maybe focus on the facts that were not known to everyone?
Yes, Anustup, and audience members, if you realize, as we were trying to tell you, it's always two stories, right? It's never just one point of view. So there will be facts that one person knows that and the other doesn't, and there will be facts that both of them know. Here, as an audience also, you knew that the organization is trying to bounce back post-COVID. Bhavna looked overworked. It seemed that she is trying to put in her best efforts. Abhishek clearly mentioned that you have not reached 80% of your target, which was communicated. You are at 75%. You would have felt an empathy point also, that just 5% short, maybe they can talk it out. This is all that was known to everyone. Let me tell you what was not known to you and was just known to Abhishek or just known to Bhavna. Abhishek knew that if the company doesn't bounce back to pre-COVID levels this month itself, the whole business might shut down. That means the question is whether he would give one more chance to Bhavna, which he's giving through the PIP, right? 1 month, perform, and you can survive. Or is he actually giving himself one more chance? That if Bhavna performs this month, maybe he also retains his job and saves the business. Maybe he chose a wrong way to get it done. But imagine his stress levels. He's running a business which might not exist the next month. Secondly, Bhavna knew that Abhishek did not know that Bhavna's mother is unwell. Why Bhavna broke down, and I think she acted really well. Why Bhavna broke down was because only she knew her mother is suffering from a very, very difficult disease and is unwell, needs to be taken care of. And right now, she's the only earner in the family. Maybe her brother, her sibling has lost their jobs and she's the only person earning. Abhishek had no clue about that. And when communicated in the wrong way, she feels only she is being hard dealt with, without telling Bhavna all the reasons why Abhishek is taking that step. So as you can see, two sides to the story. What came out is what you saw, but you did not see that iceberg where only the tip was visible and there was a lot beneath it for both of them that was not visible.
Correct. Thank you, Debojit, for that, decoding the case study for us. So now that you have seen this story, did anything surprise you? Did anything think about how would you have responded differently? And put yourself in both their shoes and keep thinking. But what I'm going to do is now take you through a framework. And this framework is actually not mine. Everything that I am bringing together is from some very, very reputed sources. I'll share those sources with you. This is from a very interesting book called Difficult Conversations, which is the same title, which was written by a group of Harvard professors. But I've tried to make this simpler so that we can consume it better. And I want to talk you through what I would call a 5-step framework or a 5P framework, that we prepare for the conversation, we clarify the purpose of the conversation, we partner with the person or the group of people with whom we share the problem, we process through a dialogue what is their story and what is our story, and then we problem solve. In fact, the prepare step and even the purpose step, which are the first 2 steps, in fact, they largely happen inside your mind and even before you have the conversation. So I want you to pay special attention to these 2 steps, and I'm going to take a little more time to go through these steps so that you have a better understanding, right? And yes, I will share those sources with you. So just like Debojit said, there were many things happening in that conversation. It was exactly like an iceberg. What you saw was just the tip of that iceberg. So whenever difficult conversations happen, one way to look at it is that it's not one conversation, it's actually many conversations, right? But in those many conversations, there are 3 important conversations. So one conversation is called the what happened conversation. Okay, who's right, who's wrong, what's the intent, who has good intent and who doesn't have good intent, right? What is the impact on me, what is the impact on the other person, right? And we make all these judgments, right? We are making all these judgments even before the other person has spoken or shared their point of view. We have assumed either we are right or they have poor intent, that the impact on me is going to be terrible, and sometimes we ascribe blame to the others. But now think about that case study which we just went through, that what do you think, and you can play either Abhishek or Bhavna, that what do you think were their interpretations of what happened, and what is there an alternate interpretation, right? Just think about it, and if you feel free, type it into the chat box, that what is, so there is, in the what happened conversation, there's something you can see, but there is things you cannot see, which is the 2 different stories. So if you have any interpretations of the 2 different stories that was happening, either in that conversation or even in a conversation you've had, even better if you could reflect on a conversation that you had where you assumed a certain story, but when you actually went in and found out there was possibly another story to it, reflect on it, see if you can type that into the chat box, and we'll move further into the second conversation. The first conversation is therefore what happened. That's the first thing. And usually what happened is somewhat more visible. What is, beneath the surface is a very, very important conversation. And that's what is called the feelings conversation. That a lot of conversations is not about the decision that was taken. In many cases, the decisions that are taken, you can't change, or the situation you can't change. In this case, actually, it's perhaps true that even if there was a grand negotiation, the outcome of that PIP decision perhaps could not have changed. But the choice that both of them had was, were they able to deal with each other's feelings better, right? How am I feeling at every stage? So did you notice the difference in the feelings conversation when both of them were conversing, right? What did you notice about the difference in feelings versus what was the difference in the feelings when Debojit asked each of them privately? Did you notice a difference? And what was the difference? Right? So in many cases, what was happening was that the feelings were there, but they were not being expressed in a manner which was purposeful. So they were revealing themselves as judgments. They were revealing themselves as, I could see that Abhishek especially was suppressing a lot of his feelings, right? He tried to get over with the conversation as quickly as possible because he perhaps sensed, and I don't know for sure, perhaps he sensed that he could not deal with what was going on with Bhavna, right? And I don't know about Bhavna. Bhavna was perhaps not aware of what Abhishek was feeling, because he had that sort of a deadpan expression on his face. So it's very hard to understand what he's going through, right? Absolutely. And while you think about them, also think about what happens to you, because constantly let's put the scanner back on earth, because we are not now, we are done with Abhishek and Bhavna largely. We are now beginning to work on ourselves, right? So while you are now reflecting going forward, use the case, but use the opportunity to reflect when you go through these feelings, what happens to you. But finally, at the root of all conversations is a conversation, and may seem a bit philosophical, is called the identity conversation. That will I become the loser? Will I be seen as weak? Will I be seen as aggressive? Will I lose my popularity? And this has happened to me a lot. A lot of times, this whole popularity, I've been guilty of playing a popularity contest all my life. So I have always tried to please other people. So I've always avoided difficult conversation because I felt that, yes, I have lots of friends, I'm really popular. And if I, tell someone something which is unpleasant, will I become an unpleasant person as a result of this, right? And spending a lot of time on this, because if you are able to just absorb this fact that there are three distinct conversations going in, and now of course we can give you some tools to deal with it, but the first step is recognizing that we are going through each of these conversations in all of our difficult conversations. So here are some practical tips. One is, let's step out, and I'll just give you two words you can always remember. One is the word you, and the other is the word and. If you don't remember anything out of this, and say, what are the best kind of words to use? And sometimes you and I interchangeably when needed, but remember the word and always. And I think that's if there is one word I want you to think through across, it's the word and. So do not blame the situation. The situation has been the contribution of both of them, right? So when I failed to perform at my job, did I take enough feedback? Did I go back? Did I start this conversation? And when I come to a decision to let go of someone, what have I contributed? Have I done enough as a manager to bring? Doesn't the performance of the employee reflect as much as me as a manager? So I think if we can phrase the contribution that, hey, Debojit, this is what you've done wrong, to, hey, Debojit, you know what? I've also done something which has not been the best of actions, and I know you're also responsible for it. So take responsibility, but take mutual responsibility. So shifting from the blame frame to contribution. The second is not assume that you know all the facts. Do you think this conversation would have gone differently if both Abhishek and Bhavana would have stopped and asked each other some questions? So I'm just kind of asking, putting them on the spot. So Bhavana, what kind of questions could you have asked Abhishek? And Abhishek, what kind of questions could you ask Bhavana to find out more? Right? And finally, we should not judge or we should not vent, but we describe our feelings. We should not deny our feelings, get clarity, and acknowledge our feelings. And we should not always stick to one identity. So, for example, just because somebody in a situation said something to us, that doesn't necessarily make him a bad person. A bad person can do good things, or a good person can do bad things. So again, the and frame, right? You can, as a result of a situation, can either be in a situation weak, but you are a competent person in general. So I wanted to spend a little more time here because this is the crux of the matter. This is almost, we can just end the conversation here. So whatever I'm almost going to say is pretty much the tale of how to implement it in a conversation. So I just wanted to spend a little more time to help you absorb this. So how do you go about it? And I'll go a little bit quicker here because now you've decoded the 3 conversations. The first is to be purposeful. Find out, what do you really want out of the conversation? If you want a deal out of the conversation, and many times this has happened to me, I'm in a sales call, I want the customer to close a deal, and we are about to get on to close the deal, but the customer says something bad about one of my previous colleagues who has visited him, or something that he didn't like about something about our company, and I get into an argument. Then I have lost track of what my purpose is. My purpose is being clear, is to move towards the problem, to discover a common goal, solve a problem. My purpose is not to win an argument, right? Or to take a position. My purpose is to solve this problem. Once you've discovered your purpose, then get on the table. This may sound like a easy thing to do, but a lot of times difficult conversations just don't happen because you've never invited the other person to the table and said, hey, I know we have a problem. I understand that you and I might have had some role to play in it, but I just want to sit down and work it through. And nobody takes that opportunity. So it obviously results in this kind of blow-ups, and sometimes what I call getting ambushed. Most of the time, I've been ambushed by problems because people, I wanted to have a conversation with them. I have not taken that lead to just have the conversation. Listen, 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 and understand that while listening doesn't mean you make the other person right, but probe and get more information. So the best tool is to ask questions, right? Best tool is to ask questions. And I think a lot of times we underestimate, and many of, I understand, and Tanvi is asking a question, many of us are younger people, and we often do not find the courage or the conviction, and doesn't matter, even I struggle. I am probably twice the age of most people on this audience, I can imagine, but I struggle as well to gather courage to ask people these questions. But believe it or not, the other person appreciates it when you want to find out more. So asking a good question, sharing your own viewpoint, sharing your side of this story, but not as an argument, but as an experience. Did I hear you right? Clarify, acknowledge. Those things are useful in processing that conversation. And finally, You want to problem solve, you want to reframe the conversation. Okay, now that we have this conversation, you know what? Again, going back to the and frame, you know what? I started with by saying I am right and you are wrong to saying that we have just different stories. I started by saying you are rude and to saying that I felt hurt. That was my experience. You can't deny. But when you say I am rude, you are rude, you put the other person on the defensive. So the problem solving step is to ensure that you actually show movement from where you started. And if you show that movement from where you started, the chance is the other person will also show movement from where he or she or they have started. Finally, I want to ask to not just have this discussion, but apply some of these rules. So are we ready for a second go? Debojit, do we have some time for a second session?
Yeah, we can do that. Very well put out thoughts, Anustup. Just debriefing for myself and the audience in terms of the 5 steps that you spoke about. All of them very relevant. You started with preparing what has happened, and therefore sorting out the 3 conversations in the mind, taking into account the feelings of the person also. Moved on to the purpose. Sometimes in these difficult conversations, we leave the purpose and focus on our part of the story and trying to win the story. I think beautifully mentioned that in front of a customer, if you're trying to win a deal or win business, and then you forget that and try to win a point with the customer, which might help not get you the deal at all, doesn't help. Then partnering, where you actually invite the person on the table rather than moving away. I was listening to a very famous TED talk yesterday where they said move towards the conflict, don't avoid the conflict. And move towards the conflict is partnering, saying there is something we need to discuss, let's do this now rather than doing this tomorrow or day after, which is just avoiding it. Then processing would be about listening to their story and sharing yours. The decision or the conversation can come later. No one stops you from sharing your version of the story first and listening to their version of the story very openly. And last is problem solving. Once you have done all of this, it becomes so much easier for us to solve it together. And as Anustup said, and where you have said before, I am hurt, to saying you said that which maybe evoke that particular feeling in me. You were rude to maybe we did not take that part of the conversation very positively, where you're moving to an and framework. Thanks, Anustup. I think we can keep this in front of us, guys, and then look at a second case study. This one is completely voluntary, and I would invite 2 people from the audience who want to come up right now. I will just assign very simple roles to both of you, and let's see if you can try to use some of this that we have just learned in the conversation. Can I have 2 volunteers, please? If there are people who are ready from the audience, it's absolutely okay. There is no right or wrong when you are speaking after volunteering. Can I have 2 people who want to volunteer? You can unmute and speak, or you can mention in the chat box. We will tell you the situation. I'll wait for a few more seconds so that people get the time to decide.
Okay, Puranjyoti Pukhan.
Puran says he wants to go. Okay, we can have one more.
We have a couple of guests from outside India. Can I request some of them to participate? Maybe we'll get a cross-cultural perspective. I see Mr. Ziad smiling. So can I take that as a yes?
Okay, big yes.
Okay, so we have our second volunteer. Or no, I wouldn't call that a volunteer, but commandeered.
Had you waited 2 seconds, I would have volunteered because I was reading your message that we exchanged some time ago about this upcoming event. All right, happy to.
Okay, so welcome Mr. Ziad and Puran for volunteering in this case study. You are able to access the chat box, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
What you and the whole audience will get right now on the chat box is the overall scenario. So there are two parties. Mr. Ziad, you're the customer who is very frustrated about a particular service that you wanted to take, but you have been asking for, but you eventually withdrew and you're asking for a refund for 3 months now. You're a very frustrated customer asking for a refund of your money, hard-earned money for 3 months now. Whereas Mr. Puran is that representative, the organization representative who has just called you up and said, sorry, sir, I have just received your request and please give me some time. I'm going to help you in order to refund you the money as soon as possible. So the situation that is there is you had paid $50,000 and for a 3-month online course, but you could not attend it for a family emergency. You pulled out. You have been asking it for 3 months, but you have not received any reward from the organization. The normal rule says you should get the refund in 30 days. But now it's 90 days. So you're visibly frustrated, angry. Puran on the other side has just joined this role. He was in the organization, but in a different role. So he's just joined this role. He has a lot of things to finish. One of them is conversing with you and helping you with the refund as well as calming you down on helping you get the refund. Mr. Ziad, you would also personally get from Palak 1 or 2 points that I'm not disclosing to the audience right now, which is why you are even more frustrated. And Puran, you would also get 1 or 2 points from Palak in your private chat box, in the same chat box, but it will be a private text that that you can use while you're talking. Puran, if you can switch on your video, if it's not already on.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Puran, you're clear, right, about the situation?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Let's see how it goes. Let's start.
So, sorry, just to get this right, what I got privately is what I can classify as my side of the story or my argument.
Absolutely.
That Puran has no idea about, but maybe I assume he does, so that's where my anger comes from.
Absolutely. Correct interpretation.
And the conversation isn't going to follow the 5 P's model. It's going to follow the emotional, difficult model.
No, I would recommend that if you took something away this time, that we use whatever you might have learned, not to.
So
that's a useful clarification. It will be great. I'm not saying you follow all the 5 P's, but if you can follow some learnings, and the whole purpose is to see if we could have learned something from this, right?
Understand. Okay, so instead of repeating the conversation we watched at the very beginning, we want to see what we can apply from the 5 P's.
Right. Anustup, if you can put the 5 P's on the screen, that would be useful.
It's there.
Okay.
Yeah, we can go ahead. Yeah. Puran, you want to start by calling him and saying, sir, wanted to talk to you about your refund?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Hello, sir. Good afternoon. Sir, my name is Puran. Actually, I'm calling from StudyMate, as I got an applications from my manager regarding your complaint that you have, you are asking for some refund and you have not received the amount till now. So how can I help you, sir? What's the problem exactly? Can you please guide me to understand your problem, sir?
Well, as much as I'm happy you're calling, I have to tell you that I'm totally frustrated because this call should have happened way a long time ago.
Okay,
This
sir.
conversation is 3 months old.
Okay, sir.
And with that, can you please spare me repeating the whole story again? I'm sure as now you are managing this account, you have
Yeah.
some details to start with about what's been going on. Am I right?
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have checked it. Yeah.
So do you see that okay to delay this whole process for nearly 3 months when your policy states clearly that everything should have been done within 30 days?
Yes, sir. I have checked your application that you are asking for refund as you took an admission before 3 months, and I think you put an email that you are not able to join the class because of some family issue, right, sir?
True.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So what happened exactly, sir? Actually, due to some company's internal issue that resources manager who's received your application regarding your refund. Currently, he is not in our organization due to some his internal issue. So I'll request you to, if you can give me 10 to 15 days more time to check whether your amount has been processed or not. Is it possible? Can you give me a time, sir?
Honestly, I can't say yes, and I hope you will understand why. Two reasons in particular. The first one
Yes.
is
Okay, sir.
internal issues are internal issues. I'm not to delve into what these issues were, but at least I wish if this was a professional conversation or a platform, I wish I had received any acknowledgement that this is under process. There might be some expected delay. We apologize, etc., just to keep me in the loop and make me feel that somebody is working behind the scenes on this. That's number one. Number two, now you had mentioned 10 to 15 days. I lost count how many 10 to 15 days of promises I had received earlier
Okay, okay.
with the people who previously handled this. So I am at a point, and there's nothing personal here, I'm at a point where I've lost the trust in whatever I'm receiving from the other side, whom you happen to be representing at this moment.
Okay, sir. Got it.
At the same time, with all
Yes,
these
sir.
promises coming every 15 or 20 or 30 days, pushing the matter a bit further, is there any consideration of what might happen to me in the next few months? Maybe I won't be in town. Maybe I will be having other commitments. There might be many other issues where I can't attend to the problem the way I'm attending now.
Okay. So, sir, recently I joined this company, and I know that company's policy and refund policy, about a course. When you applied for our course, and we have a policy about refund, so
Right.
definitely you get the money. However, maybe it will take some time more, sometimes, due to some issues. But this is a reputed company here. We are serving these people from last 5 to 10 years ago. Okay, sir. So it's a very reputed organization. So don't worry about the refund process. That definitely your amount will be credited in your bank within 10 to 15 days. And I joined recently before 1 month ago, and I'm just checking all the refund cases, that how it, from how long it has been, it has not been processed, or it is in a in process. So
Right.
can I as per our policy, the amount have to process within 30 days, right, sir? But I think
True.
you have not received the amount, but I can give you a guarantee on it that in between 10 to 15 days you will receive the amount, and I will send the email to you, and I'm confirming you that within 10 days, max to max it will take 15 days, sir, but within 10 days it will you will receive a confirmation email from us, and obviously, and the amount will hit your bank account within 15 days, sir. So can you please give me 10 to 15 days time, sir, so that I can help you as soon as possible? And also I'll put an email to you, sir, and personally I'll put an email to you, and I'll share my contact number to you, and you can contact me immediately or anytime, whenever you are free, or you want to ask me something, and I will do my work, and I'll do as soon as possible, and I'll process your refund amount after checking all these documents and everything, sir.
Okay. Can you remind me with your first name again, please?
Yeah, my name is Puran, sir.
Okay, Puran, you told me you have recently joined the company. Congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. Yeah.
Trying to put myself in your shoes and understand that you might be put in a position to clear lots of backlogs that were left unattended by whoever was before you in this position.
Okay.
So I will put myself in your shoes here. As long as you do give me a written confirmation of your understanding of the situation,
Okay.
a written confirmation of what I have been promised now,
Okay.
and an understanding as well that within 2 to 3 months from now, I will be relocating, and following up will be next to impossible. So I hope if we develop this understanding between us and we both have an empathy of where everybody comes from in the situation,
Yes,
we
sir.
can truly feel assured that within 10 to 15 days, this whole story will be history. Can this happen?
But you know, sir, sometimes what happened?
Sorry, Puran and Mrs. Zia. Let's cut it here. I think we've
Yeah.
had the summary. And
Okay.
great job done. Thank you both of you. And doing it without any preparation takes a lot of effort. Thanks. Over to you, Anustup, for closing it out on what we just heard.
No, thank you so much. I think I would close out on a couple of things. I hope I was able to address some of the questions. And I think I'd just close it out with one question, which I think is on the mind of a lot of people. Is that when there is a huge power difference, right? That there is a power difference because the other person is a customer. Let's say he was a really big customer. In this case, Ziad is a single individual, but imagine he was a really big customer, or somebody is your boss. So that's I think a very, very hard relationship to deal with. The second is an uncooperative relationship. Both have come up in the question boxes, and I want to address both of that. And I would start out by saying they're incredibly difficult situation. I don't have a right answer. But I want to tell you that cultivating the skill of formalizing this conversation is very important. That when we say we have complained or we have told, and I have done it myself very many times, and I've been on both sides, right? As an employee, as a manager, I have sometimes had both power differentials. I think formalizing this and that I'm going to invite you to a conversation about this issue is a very different conversation than while some other conversation or review is happening, to bring it up as a complaint or an issue. Then it doesn't get the attention, because human brain is tuned to attention. So I think people who are assertive to just lay out the boundary for that conversation is great. The second is an uncooperative person, which is a particularly hard problem to deal with, especially in our culture where a lot of people want to, as Debojit said, go away from the problem, right? So in that case, it is important to, again, use the same inquiry method that I experience you, not as, I don't say you are uncooperative, but I experience you as not giving enough time or attention to this problem that we are having. Is there a reason on your side why you are behaving? And maybe you will get something out of it, which means that the person will come forward and explain and you'll get into the conversation. Or it's not worth having the conversation, in which case you can say that conversation is not the best way with this person, because conversation doesn't always work. But then the other side knows that you have chosen to exercise your power. And that's what I will end with, that we often fail to realize the enormous power that we have on people, by virtue of our authenticity, by virtue of who we are. And if you have a chance, read these two books. Both are always available on Amazon and other portals. Difficult Conversations by Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Heen. I have had a golden opportunity to attend a session with them, and absolutely brilliant book, which is the three conversations model. And again, a similar book, Crucial Conversations by Patterson, Grenny, Macmillan, and Switzler, again provides lots of practical tips. Once again, thank you very much for having taken your time out on Saturday to have this dialogue, this conversation, and being so engaged. I do not take it lightly. And we would love to have you back on the channel. And thank you, Debojit, Palak, and the Crackhead team for doing such a wonderful job, and for the 4 courageous participants, Abhishek, Bhuvna, Ziad, and Puran, for taking our challenge up on a public stage.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anustup. I think very intense discussion and very useful discussion today. The beautiful part is in the second case study, how both of them were listening to each other, were putting forward their point of view, were prepared with their own emotions, were in control of that while still having the conversation. And also it happened in the moment, right? It was not a prepared one. The first case study we had prepared from before, the second one happened right now. I think that lays a lot of emphasis on the kind of work that happened in the session today. And also credit to you, I think we have all had a very, very interesting and involved session. People, as always, we will share the recording of the session on our YouTube channel, which you can subscribe to, and you can go through the entire session as many times as you want in order to absorb the points. Anustup has mentioned the 2 books already. When you go through the session, you will have snippets of the presentation also that you can reach out to on the Cracked platform. There were a few questions that Anustup has already answered when the second case study was going on. Please feel free to keep asking questions on our LinkedIn page. We will send a thank you note within the next half an hour to 45 minutes, where please keep asking your questions to Anustup, and he'll be very happy. We have requested him over the next 2 to 3 days to keep answering your questions on difficult conversations, whatever you have. Thank you, Anustup, again. It was absolutely wonderful to have both the audience and you with us. We are ending our Crack Season 2, people, next week. Next week is the last session of Season 2. We are going to have this session in the evening. This is an evening session from 6 to 7. And we have a very well-known right now online and TV personality coming in. Vineet Nan Panchi is known as Panchi in the media world. He's the owner of Word of Mouth Media. He's working with various organizations right now also in order to work on something that he believes is his life mission. And his life mission is to improve relationships. He thinks, especially for this audience of 20 to 30, 35-year-old, that's majorly the audience that we have seen on the Crack platform, relationships becomes a very, very critical point that becomes make or break, whether it's personally or professionally. And in his language, he's going to talk about rishte next week on the Crack platform. We'll obviously be sharing you with the promos and the trailers and the registration links that all of you can register in. But looking forward to see all of you next week for the session on relationships, which is the last session that we have with a renowned TV personality. Thanks, Anustup, again. Looking forward to have all of you next week again. Thank you.